Well, good morning. Just a quick reminder, exams next Tuesday, and then we start dissections again, and our first dissection will be fish. Alright, so we are still on plants. Yesterday we talked about plant forms. Now we're going to talk about vegetative plant development, and so we're actually going to cover 2 chapters, but I'm only pulling out the most important bits that you need to know for your exam. So we're going to talk about plant development first, and then we're going to transition into plant defenses. So this is the overview of today's lecture, where we're going to talk about embryo development, seeds, fruits, germination, and this might actually be like review because we kind of went in depth with when we were doing the overview of green plants with gymnosperms and angiosperms.
Like chapter 30, wasn't it?
Yes. And then we'll transition into the second half of our lecture talking about physical defenses, what plants can do to defend themselves. Will they release toxins, how certain animals will protect plants, like we've talked about how ants might protect certain plants. We read that article on the plant fungi ant relationship. And then we'll also talk about systemic responses to invaders as well. So like in this case, a plant, if it's getting attacked by an herbivore, will release a certain chemical that will attract ants, and the ants will attack that herbivore. So I just think that's pretty fascinating. I mean, that it will release a certain chemical and call on the cavalry to come save them. Okay, so first off, embryo development. This begins once that egg cell has been fertilized. And so how does it get fertilized? The pollen tube grows once that pollen grain enters the angiosperm, and it goes through the synergids and thus releasing 2 sperm cells. And so remember, the 2 sperm cells undergo double fertilization. One of them fertilizes with that central cell with the polar nuclei, and that's the sperm, or that's the cell that produces the endosperm. So it's like nutrition for the embryo. And the other one actually fertilizes the egg, producing a zygote, which turns into the embryo. So this was double fertilization in the angiosperm. So that's nothing new here. Then a single cell divides and it starts to produce a 3-dimensional body plan. So the first division in an angiosperm is asymmetrical. Okay, so it's not even. So here's my zygote. There's that little star there. Asymmetrical. I got this huge cell, I got this little cell. Generates cells with 2 different fates. The smaller one becomes the embryo, and then the larger one is called the suspensor. And this is going to be the link between the embryo to the nutrition. And so you can see that here. So here's my cell embryo. Now it's 2 little cells in the embryo. My suspensor starts to grow, and it's forming this bridge, a suspensor, to that nutrition, which is down here. Okay. So then we start to see a simple body plan of this plant emerge during embryogenesis. And it's all regulated by, the pattern or how much cell division occurs. But we start to see the vertical axis and the radial axis start to develop. So remember, vertical is the root shoot, and radial would be like your horizontal, the width of the plant. And we all know that the 3 basic tissues are involved in both of these processes, really. So there's my apical basal pattern, so this would be my vertical axis, up and down, and then radial, horizontal.
Map.
Right. Okay, so 3 basic tissue systems, which we have already discussed, but they are located radially in the root shoot axes. So we have the protoderm, which is that outermost cell that becomes the epidermis or the dermal tissue. And then we get our ground meristem, which is the bulk of our embryonic material, and it kind of becomes the ground tissue. And then the last tissue system would be the procambium. The core of the embryo becomes the vascular tissue. So this is our epidermis. This would probably be like our cuticle with the substance cutin. Our ground meristem is involved in a lot of functions like storage and photosynthesis. And then the procambium, our vascular tissue. What 2 vascular kind of tissues did we talk about yesterday that move things?
Vesicles, right?
Not vesicles.
What?
Moves water and food. What do we call those? Come on. Food.
Flow.
Phloem and xylem. Okay.
Dry.
That was an easy one. Come on now.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Okay, so we have discussed morphogenesis. This was way back in first semester. Sorry, Mitchell. But we do know that with morphogenesis, how cells divide affects what it's going to turn into, changes in cell shape, how they expand, where they are on the cell plate. We have hormones that are involved. We talked about in fruit flies like the bicoid. Oh God, what was the other one? Bicoid and I'm blanking on it. But certain hormones determine what's going to be the head, what's going to be the tail. Well, plants have the same thing. They have certain hormones that tell cells, are they going to be a root, are they going to be a shoot? And then there's also genes involved as well. So just morphogenesis, lots of factors involved in plant development, just like humans and animals. Okay, I wanted to show you, okay, I have to slide this over on this side. Okay, all right, even amounts of light can affect how a plant's going to, develop. Is it going to flower? And so what this diagram is depicting is a 24-hour day. And obviously yellow is light and dark. And so if a plant has more sunlight, and this is a short day plant, it's not going to bloom. But then all of a sudden, if it gets a switch in light, then it will, And then sometimes they do studies where they give it this amount of sunlight, and then it's dark, and then all of a sudden they'll give it a flash of light, and they'll see what happens. And maybe nothing happens, or maybe something does happen. And so this slide kind of shows this. Okay, I gotta slide this over here. So, okay, so here we have seeds, and they're in dark. And obviously they're not going to germinate because they kind of need sunlight. Here they gave it some red light for a short period of time, and they germinated. Here they went red, and then as soon as red was over, they gave it far red, which is like a different wavelength. And you can kind of see some germinated, but most of them did not. So then they're like, okay, let's go red, far red, red. Germination. Then they went red, far red, far red. Hardly any germination. And so yes, light is a huge component in how plants are going to start to develop. So I just thought that was really cool. Okay, food reserves during the embryogenesis. It needs food supply to help support all the cell divisions that are going on in this embryo. So remember, angiosperms undergo that double fertilization to produce the endosperm. But in gymnosperms, they kind of have this food source from the megagametophytes. So that's where they get their food source. All right, so then once the embryo starts to develop, we start to have like a protection to cover it. So the ovule becomes hard or protective in some cases, as you can see in this diagram right here. Angiosperms, they develop the carpal wall that covers the fruit. And we talked about how fruit is actually the ovary of a plant because, the seeds are inside. It's covered by an ovary, another protective structure. So yes, you're eating ovaries when you eat fruit. Okay, moving on to seeds. Okay, so early in the embryo development of an angiosperm, so we're in flowering plants here, it will stop development. And as soon as it's arrested or stopped, meristems will start to differentiate. So remember, meristems are kind of like stem cells for the plant. The outer cell layers develop into a seed coat. So we're producing seeds in our flowering plants, that are going to be covered by an ovary soon. And so the seed is now enclosed in a dormant embryo, and it's kept as food. So seeds protect the embryo. So that way, if conditions are not favorable, they can lay dormant until conditions are right. Inside the seed, there's stored food. So that way the young plant can grow and develop before its photosynthetic activities can begin. And not only do seeds provide protection, but they help aid in dispersal. Okay.
Let's come to your homework at 2:30.
Sounds good, thank you. Okay. Once the seed coat forms, metabolic rates stops, and 5 to 20% of the seed is water. So you may see on like seed packages, there's an expiration date, and there's a reason for that. Is because after so many years, your germination rates decrease. So pretty soon your seeds aren't good anymore. I'm trying to remember a story where it was like a farmer was cleaning out his bin, and he had seeds from like the 1960s. And he's like, oh, so I think it was sweet corn. And he tried to grow, and they actually did germinate because they were from an actual like sweet corn. Like he harvested his own seeds; they weren't genetically modified or anything. So I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, fruits are mature ovaries. So when we look at the angiosperm, the carpel, which is another word for the ovary, has 3 layers. We have our exocarp, which is this outer layer. In this case, tomato is a fruit. We have the mesocarp, which is kind of like the middle layer, and then we have the endocarp, which is kind of the area in this, the jelly substance of a tomato, if you want to think of it as that. Okay, so here are some other fruits. Okay, so like pea plants, raspberry fruits. You can kind of see all the reproductive structures for it. But I think the most, easiest would be an apple, because we can see the exocarp, the endocarp, and then the mesocarp. Okay, even fruit structure shows how it's adapted for its environment. So we have dry fruits like legumes and samaras. The samaras, if you don't know what they are, they come from maple trees. They're the helicopters you might have played with when you were younger. So legumes, they will split along the carpal edges, and then the seeds are attached to these edges. And so, when you eat, like green beans here or sweet peas, it's very, very thin. It's okay. It's not a very thick wall, and they can dry at maturity. Samaras, there's no split, but now we have these wing-like structures that help them spread through wind dispersal. We have simple fleshy fruits like the drupes and the true berries. So with the drupes, the single seed's encased in a hard pit. So drupes would be like peaches and apricots. So each layer has a different structure and function, but that endocarp is where that pit is located. True berries, the entire pericarp is fleshy, and they have multiple seeds in one or more ovaries. So like with raspberries or strawberries, I always get seeds stuck in my teeth, and it's so annoying, but it's so good at the same time. So here's a picture of a drupe. I don't know what this is. Does anyone know what kind of fruit that is? This bottom one. Papaya? No, it's not a mango. Is it a papaya?
What are papayas?
I don't know.
Definitely looks like a mango.
Yeah, I think that's mango.
Mangoes are more.
Yeah, but with mangoes, it's just really hard to cut through. Like, they don't have this huge seed. Unless the one...
Yeah, they do.
They
Mangoes
have
do.
really big seeds.
Mangoes do?
Yeah, they have a huge thing.
I do this... I don't think so.
I'm looking it up.
That's a mango.
It's a mango? I've never seen a huge seed like that. It's always just a hard pith. Maybe...
Oh, they're not that round. Like that. Okay, this is the same exact shape. Mango.
Okay. All right.
That just might be a really big mango.
All right.
I think that's just a really, really big mango.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, their seeds have like those stripes on them.
Okay, so yes, tomatoes are fruits. They're actually berries because the seeds are in the fleshy part of it. This is a coconut. So a coconut is also a drupe. It's got a pit.
There's so many different layers of coconut.
Okay, compound fleshy fruits, aggregates, and multiple fruits, so strawberries. Okay, with an aggregate, there are many ovaries of a single flower. The ovaries are not fused, and so then it's covered by this continuous pericarp. That's why we get all these tiny little seeds here. Okay. We all know that fruits are a great adaptation so that the angiosperms can colonize large areas because animals like fruits. They'll eat it. They'll ingest the hard seeds. The hard seeds are protected. and then they'll excrete it at the other end. Some fruits have hooked spines, and so as you brush by, they'll hook onto you, or they'll hook onto the mammal's fur, and then sometimes they'll get buried by the organism, or they'll fall off. We have wind, we've talked about seeds with wings or parachutes, and there's also water dispersal. Coconuts actually dispersed by water, they float.
What is that little triangle on there?
The microphone's off, I think. Yeah. I don't know. All right, germination. So germination can be triggered by external, internal cues. And how we classify germination is when the first root goes through the seed coat. And how that happens is you need water, and you need sunlight, and you need the right temperatures. And so the seed coat will absorb water. It creates this osmotic pressure to break the seed coat, and then the root can emerge. Other additional environmental signal that I just mentioned, light, temperature, and the stratification, periods of low temperature exposure. Now the seed coat doesn't just get tossed away once it splits open. It helps anchor the young plants into the soil. And it also provides an energy source to the growing plants. So we have starch, yes. We have starch and proteins, fats, and oils stored in this. We have starch metabolism initiated by a plant hormone called gibberellic acid. Gibberellic acid aids in plant elongation. So if you were to apply gibberellic acid to like your growing pea plants or your tomato plants or any type of plant, you would see not immediate, but definitely a taller plant compared to those that were not exposed to gibberellic acid. Okay. And then obviously once that seedling has been orientated where, you know, it knows what's up, it knows what's down, and it has sunlight, photosynthesis can begin. Okay, so that's plant development. Moving on to plant defense responses. Plants are always constantly under attack. Farmers, you probably know this. There are many viruses out there. There's lots of bacteria, especially fungi. That's really taken a toll on plants. Animals, and then as well, you know, plants are not only competing with these guys, but they're also competing with other plants for resources. So let's talk about physical defenses. So they have to be able to withstand the elements of nature as well as other threats. So like, for example, enemies, they might steal nutrients or hijack their DNA replicating mechanisms. And so when plants can detect this, sometimes they'll just, excuse me. I better pause this. Sorry about that. Okay, so when enemies attack plants, sometimes they will kill the plant cells immediately. So we call the brown dead tissue necrosis. So you may have seen that. First line of defense for a plant is the dermal tissue, that outer epidermis. It's got that wax, that cutin that protects it from water loss as well as attack, because who likes to chew on wax, right? Other structures within the epidermal cells, that Casparian strip is made also of lipids and wax-like structures. So plants, they usually don't like to go through the Casparian strip if they've gotten that far inside the plant. We have silica inclusions, which means sometimes plants will secrete silica, and silica is like sand, so it's like, well, you wouldn't like to chew that either. We have trichomes, which are those spines. We have bark, we have thorns, and they all work together to protect the plant interior. But damage can still be done by the piercing or chewing or entering through the stomata, so the underside of the leaf. We also have bacteria that provide sites for ice nucleation. So like the plant can have like frozen spots on it, or ice can develop and kill cells. We have mycorrhizae, fungi, and rhizobacteria that can form beneficial relationships. So not all fungi and bacteria are bad. Some of them are actually good. Toxin defenses. Lots of plants have toxins or chemicals that will kill herbivores or make them sick. And so one of the most common toxin defenses is cyanide. And what cyanide does to an organism is it stops its electron transport chain. And what is the ETC found in? Where is it found in?
Good question. The ETC?
Yep. Say that again.
What? What is he saying? What are you saying actually?
I can't hear.
Yes, it is the mitochondria. Thank you. All right, so the mitochondria, what does the mitochondria do for a cell?
It's the powerhouse.
It's the powerhouse. It makes ATP. So if you shut down the electrons, it can't make ATP because then hydrogen can't move across and build a high proton concentrated for ATP synthase. Wow. Okay, so it blocks CR, and if you know my abbreviation, CR is cellular respiration. Yeah. All right. Plants can also repel with strong flavors or odors and make them ill and sick as well. How they do this, how they maintain their chemical arsenal supply, is they have to use secondary metabolites. So some common secondary metabolites, and some of them we as humans have utilized, alkaloids. Examples of alkaloids, caffeine. Couldn't start my morning without it. We have nicotine. Cocaine is an alkaloid that's produced by plants. And morphine. So all of these are
Can we do
good.
lab with cocaine?
I mean, not good. Well, cocaine's probably not good. But the morphine's used in medical purposes. So all of these affect multiple cellular processes inside organisms. You can either overstimulate them or sedate them. Okay. Another type of secondary metabolites, tannins, they will bind to proteins and inactivate them. So then once an insect, gets a hold of some tannins, they will associate that flavor, because it doesn't taste that great either, and avoid that type of plant in the future. And then we also have strong odors by plant oils, like the mint family, like the spearmints, and what's another type of mint? Spearmints and peppermints.
I knew that.
Okay. Plants can poison other plants, and when this happens, it's called Alleolopathy. I think I said that right. Alleolopathy. Alleolopathy.
Why can't they just call it like attack or something like that? Something like basic. They call it something like
Yeah,
insane.
this is a college
class.
We don't want that.
Okay. So chemical signals secreted by the roots. That chemical blocks germination of nearby seeds or inhibits the growth of neighboring plants. Black walnuts are famous for this. If you have a black walnut tree, you will notice that there aren't a lot of plants around it. And that's because it's secreting chemicals that will inhibit germination and other plant growth. And it works out for the black walnut because then it doesn't have to compete for sunlight and nutrients in the soil and water and all that. So it's like a solitary tree, a lone wolf.
What if there was two of them next to each other?
They'd fight each other. All right, we are susceptible to plant toxins. So if you remember Socrates, he was killed by hemlock extract, which was an alkaloid, and it paralyzes your motor nerve endings. So basically, he just stopped. He became paralyzed, but then his lungs probably stopped. He probably suffocated first, I think. Maybe his heart stopped. Who knows? Maybe both at the same time. Another one, ricin, which is an alkaloid in castor beans, 6 times more lethal than cyanide. This is a common poison used in, like, oh God, what is that detective's name? Hercule Poirot? Anyone read Agathia Christie, I think? No? Okay. Anyways, that was the popular poison in murder mystery books way back in early 1900s. So, yeah. What it does is it binds to your ribosomes and inhibits translation so proteins don't get made, and then you just get sick and you die.
Pretty bad way to go.
Yeah. But like I said, there are lots of secondary metabolites out there that have medicinal value. Soy and phytoestrogens lower the prostate. I spelled that right? Prostate? That just doesn't look right. Cancer in Asian males. That's in one study. Taxol in breast cancer. Taxol is a chemical that's used in a lot of cancer drugs. It's found in the plant Pacific yew. Quinine and malaria. So quinine's found in the bark of cinchona trees, and it helps combat malaria. A lot of times when British was occupying India and Africa, they would take quinine with gin to combat malaria. Okay, moving on to animals that help protect plants. acacia trees and ants. So the ants will help protect the trees from herbivores by attacking them, so maybe they'll secrete some kind of chemical. We have parasitoid wasp, caterpillars, and leaves. This is a complex relationship. We have caterpillars that eat tons of plant matter before metamorphosis. I mean, they have to like gain mass, and so they can kind of like hibernate and go into a little cocoon. And so this wound release on the plant releases a volatile compounds that wasps really like. So this compounds through the air, it attracts a female parasitoid wasp. The wasp comes to that injured plant, sees the caterpillar. It's like, hey, that's a good place to fertilize my, or have my fertilized eggs, attached to the body of the caterpillar. And then the eggs hatch and they kill the larvae, and then they eat the caterpillars as its first meal. And I'm going to show you a picture of this. It's pretty parasitoid wasp cat. Oops. Come on. Oh, I just still clicked the wrong one. Go me. Nope, that's not a good one. Hold on. I don't know what that top right corner is. There we go. This right here. Those are all larvae. Just attached to this poor caterpillar. And then they're going to hatch and they're going to eat it. It's like a ticking time bomb.
How terrible. I'm starved. What a way to go.
Systemic responses, there are two types. Static responses, which means that they'll release deterrent chemicals to kind of warn away the insect or the herbivore or whatever is attacking them. This also includes morphological structures like thorns and trichomes. There's an energetic downside because, these structures cost a lot of energy. And so these defenses, both of these, are maintained whether or not an invader is present. So these are like, it's generic. It's generic. Inducible responses are conserved until the attack actually happens. And so there's a switch where all these chemicals or these structures are starting to be made to deter predators. Okay, so I mentioned wound responses with the parasitoid wasp. So sometimes when a plant is injured, it will release a chemical or maybe a rapid production of proteinase inhibitors, which is a chemical that will affect the predator. Some types of chemicals, cysteamine, jasmonic acid, and then salicylic acid, which we all know is found in Tylenol, I believe. We also have proteinase inhibitors that will bind to digestive enzymes in the gut of the herbivore and literally eat the insect from inside out, or destroy it from the inside out. So that does it for plant development and plant defense. And so short, I just picked the most important bits of the chapter. I think they're not big chapters, but I could be wrong on that. All right, so then tomorrow is, what is tomorrow?
Saturday.
Tomorrow is Saturday, yes. Okay, so Monday would be plant transport, so we'll probably talk about xylem and phloem.